Today's lesson finds Larry searching for largemouth bass on Lake Dardanelle, part of the Arkansas River system near Clarksville, Arkansas. Let's join Larry as he uses a small 5A bomber and shares with us some of his best crankbait techniques.
One thing always to do when you're crankbait fishing is, if you caught fish there before, you know fish live there, hit it from several different angles, because a lot of times, they'll just be set up in one direction, and you can throw and throw and throw, not get a bite. You get just the right angle, that's when you get the fish.
When fishing an area that appears to be a prime area, or if you've caught fish there before, then fish the area thoroughly from several different directions. This different look at the bait may be just the thing to trigger a strike.
That was one cold-mouth fish. He actually come up there and jumped. As cold as he is. Come on. Now, that's a pretty little Arkansas River fish. And he got a hold of it pretty good. He grabbed the whole bait. See, that's when you make a pass across a point, don't just leave it because you didn't get a bite. Turn right around and go back down that thing. Even though he's not a real big one, most places that's a good fish. I've seen a lot of times I'd be proud to have a live well full of them pound and a quarter, pound and a half fish. I don't know what it is. They either see it the first time, or maybe they don't see it, or whether it's just that change in the angle. One of the biggest things I found about cold weather bass fishing, late fall, early winter bass fishing, is lure size. A lot of people have a tendency to want to keep throwing a great big crankbait when them little bitty lures, they're made for situations just like this. Cold water, small bait fish, and fishing behind people. That's when I go to a little bitty bait like that right there. Little 5A bomber. That green back gives it a tint like a shad. You'd be surprised how many times you can go down a stretch of riprap behind other people and just throw the littlest crankbait you can find and catch fish.
A small crankbait may be just the ticket in a variety of situations. In the late fall or early winter in cold water, or in an area with small bait fish, this little bait is ideal. Also, when fishing riprap behind someone, tie on the smallest crankbait possible.
To catch one. Sluggish, but he's still trying to jump. Yeah, he's still trying to jump. Where's your big brother at there, young man? Boy, to be so cold, you sure did eat it awful good. Keeper bass in just about any lake. Yeah, maybe the bigger ones will start biting here in a minute. Old long skinny point right where a bass is supposed to be.
Sometimes crankbait fishing on a river system entails a lot of moving from spot to spot, searching for the definite channel swings and drop-offs. Once you're in a good area though, be sure to work the area thoroughly before leaving.
You know, as fishermen, we all have our favorite lures. And as far as crankbaits is concerned, the Bomber series, the 5A, 6A, and 7A have always been my standbys. I mean, when I'm just down to the point to where I'm not real sure what to throw, but yet I'm pretty positive the fish are on a crankbait, that's the 3 baits I tie on, especially when I'm getting a bait that dives. They cover the depth of water that fish tend to use the majority of the time, and that's from 3 foot to about 7 foot. And one of these 3 baits will usually cover the right situation. You know, if the bait fish is little, then I use a little 5A. If I want to go a little bit deeper, I'll use the 6A or the 7A. Big bait fish, I'll use a 7A. But that little bait right there, the little 5A in the Autograph Signature Series, has always been a standby of mine. I mean, when you get into an area that's heavily fished, let's say there's a lot of boats working your favorite fishing hole or your favorite stretch of riprap, tie on a little bitty plug and just fall right in behind them. Use light line. That line size is very critical in getting the right action out of your bait. And not only that, but getting the right depth. Little lures, they do not work good with big line. So always throw it on 8 or 10 pound test line. That'll get the maximum depth out of it. And not only that, but if you'll think about it, you know, as a fisherman, our tendency is to kind of winch them in the boat. You get light line on there, and that makes you reel them a little bit slower and play them a little bit more carefully, and you don't lose as many fish. You're fishing open water like this, there's no sense in having to use great big line. It fishes different, your lures don't act good, and you do not need it. Now, if the cover's heavy and the fish are in the cover, then you're going to have to go to a bigger line or you're going to mess up. See there? Turn right around and throw right back down that point and got me another one. And I had worked the fire out of that right there. That's what you got to do, just keep throwing at the same spots. Yeah, man. Not a big one by no means, but still a pretty little bass. Just kept throwing, kept throwing, kept throwing. Yeah, just had to change the direction there. Sometimes when it gets real cold, the only way you can get them to hit it is crank it and stop. Crank it, stop. I hadn't had one hit it so far. See there, I just started running it, boy, and I mean, he nailed it. Feels like a little better fish there. Made 10 to 15 casts at that one spot. No, not a big one, just a good keeping size bass. I promise you, he wouldn't hit no big crankbait though. If I wasn't throwing that little bitty crankbait, I don't believe I'd be catching any of these bass. Not bad. You know, one of the most aggravating things about crankbait fishing is every now and then you get one right out of the box, you tie it on, and it won't run right. Let me tell you something. Most people make a big mistake by grabbing their needle nose pliers and bending that eye. That's the first thing they want to do. And the first thing you need to do is look at each and every eye and be sure that the O-ring is not restricted in some way. Sometimes they'll leave a little bit of plastic inside that eye, and the O-ring does not have the freedom to operate and wiggle properly. Take your pocket knife, if you have some kind of plastic or obstruction under there, and clean that out good and get it to where that O-ring has total freedom. Then inspect your lower eyes the same way, where your hooks hang on these hangers. You want total freedom. That, a lot of times, is the main problem. If that doesn't correct it, then throw it out and retrieve it to you, and if it runs off to the left, then take your needle nose, get on top of the eye, and bend it slightly opposite the direction that it's running. then cast it out and retrieve it again. Don't bend it too much. You know, bend it a little bit at a time, and that way you can get the correct adjustment, and I promise you your crankbait will run right. Last chance. Go find me another spot. I've about got them zeroed in where you just fish key little points. See there, last cast? I told that fish that was his last opportunity, and he got on there, didn't he? Now that's how hard you got to work for them sometimes. Come here, little feller. Just barely hooked right on the tip of the chin. One little hook. Ain't that something? Throw and throw and throw and throw, and I just had to fake him out, tell him that was his last chance. So many times we give up on a fish before we should. Thought I had worked it effectively. Tell you what, when you're fishing alone, it's a whole lot harder than when you've got two people with lures in the water. You're by yourself, boy, you can fish through fish so fast. You know, that's one of the things that never ceases to amaze me, how hard it is to find a little bitty target out there. I mean, I know that stump is there. I just hit it to cast before, and now I can't find it again. And anytime you find a good target like that on structure, boy, it is so important that you get a good line on it where you can make several casts to it, because there are lots of times you got to hit that thing 3 or 4 times in order to get a fish to bite. If they're active and aggressive, first bait through there is going to catch him every time. But you get a frontal situation or a lot of fishing pressure and the fishing gets tough, then you got to be persistent. I mean, the fish are still there, you're still in them same locations. Just takes something to trigger them into biting. Maybe you got to make them mad. I think a lot of times we got to make a fish mad to get him to bite.
Persistence is the key to crankbait fishing. When you find a good target on structure, it's important to note its location. You may have to make several casts from different directions before getting a fish to bite. The key to being productive today has been areas where the channel swings in close to points or to the bank. These areas fall off from a depth of 3 to 5 feet into 15 or 20 feet of water. On this drop-off is a variety of cover, such as stumps, logs, or brush.
It feels good. That's not a bad bass right there at all. Let go of me. By George, there is a little school of fish right there. Same spot. Caught one and excited another one into biting. Right on the bend in that creek. Well, where is he? Feels like a little better bass right there. Come on. Well, look. He can't decide whether he wants to jump or not. Were you cold or something? Ouch! Huh? That cold water got your attention? Or is it my plug got your attention? pretty good Arkansas River bass. I guess you'd consider Lake Dardanelle Arkansas River. He even took off slow. Hope you've enjoyed fishing with me today and learning a little bit more about bass fishing. I didn't catch any big fish today, but that's rivers, and not only that, but the weather. Anytime you're fishing after a tremendous cold front like that and your fish are not on heavy wood cover and right up against the bank, some days you just don't catch big ones. But one thing I can tell you, that when the fishing's tough and your fish are on shallow wood or shallow rocks and you get that severe cold front, tie you on a little 5A bomber in one of the new autographed Pro Series colors. Sometimes it'll save the day for you. Come back and get in the boat with me next week and I'll teach you how to be a better bass fisherman.